Every year, there are always a few key athletes and a few key performances that are so good that it forever becomes burned into our memories as greatness. In 2025, there were certainly many of these moments. There was Sydney McLaughlin-Lavrone's 47.78 in the World Championship final in the 400. There was Faith Kipyegon's 1500-meter world record in 3:48. There was Beatrice Chebet dipping under 14 minutes for the very first time in the women's 5,000 meters. And who could forget the GOAT of the GOATs, Mondo Duplantis, who broke his own world record in the men's pole vault 4 more times, all en route to yet another world title. The athletics world right now is absolutely stacked to the gills with international talent that is likely to set even more world records in 2026. However, just a few days ago, at the very end of this 2025 track and field campaign, we witnessed something truly special that might be the signaling of the next great international sprinter. At the 2025 Southeast Asian Games, we saw the 19-year-old Puripol Boonson set the track on fire. Now, we've already covered his 100-meter exploits, as he broke the 10-second barrier in the 100 twice within a few hours. And a slight correction here, the wind for his 9.94 was 0.7 meters per second, not 1.7 meters per second. So really, that makes it all the more impressive. This time puts Boonson right in the conversation as the fastest junior athlete to ever touch the track, and at 9.94, he is now tied 5th all-time on this World Under-20 list. But this 100 success was quickly followed by something that the world has desperately been waiting for, and even for those that expected him to run a quick time, I think that Boonson still outperformed any expectations for his next event. For this 200-meter dash, Boonson entered this race with something pretty massive to prove. If we go all the way back to 2022, he ran one of the most amazing times in history for a 16-year-old, as he dropped a time of 20.19 seconds for the half lap, a time that was only behind the great Usain Bolt at 16, as he ran a time of 20.13 to set the then age group world record. This time was also the national record for Thailand that has now stood for almost 3.5 years untouched. And the reason that this time has stood for so long with such an unwavering position at number 1 is because Boonson just hasn't been running in the 200. Despite his amazing closing abilities, which is a sprinting skill that lends itself beautifully to the half lap, his constant battle with injury has mostly prevented him from competing in the Open 200. In fact, the last time that he's even touched this event was back in 2023, but even then, his performance was met with some mixed results, as he wasn't quite able to break 21 seconds, and it really seemed as though the 100 meters was forever set to be his primary event. But with such elite numbers coming from the 100 meters, Boonson seemed poised to run something very quick. And just as many hoped, that is exactly what happened. For this 200 final, Boonson had already proven his class by the halfway point, but for his final 100 here, he only put more and more distance on this field. With an amazing second 100 meters, Boonson hit the tape in a new games record and a new personal best of 20.07 seconds, a time that improved on his own PB by more than 1/10 of a second. This time really was a long time coming, and I could not be happier to see him finally making progress in the 200. And despite not even touching this race for 2 entire seasons, he managed to make history once again. This 200-meter dash now places Boonson once again in the top 10 all-time for junior sprinters, as he's now tied with Lorenzo Daniel, and he's just barely behind Ramil Guliev at 20.04 seconds. Now, as many people have pointed out, Boonson is quite the unique sprinter to come from the Asian continent. It's almost an unwritten rule at this point that Asian athletes are supposed to have rocket starts in the 100 or the 200, but they ultimately struggle over the second half. However, this seems to be the exact opposite of Boonson's abilities, because while not the best out of the blocks, he more than makes up for it with some absolutely earth-shattering closing abilities. We have seen this man make up almost 5 full meters on an outside sprinter in the 4x1 relay. We have seen him close like a train during various 100s, but now he is bringing this skill back to the 200, and to run such a beastly time after not competing for 2 entire seasons is an accomplishment that deserves its own attention, as it really is quite unique. But believe it or not, this single performance really does put Boonson into a rarefied level that very few athletes in history have ever approached. In the history of junior sprinting, we have seen some pretty incredible talent in both the 100 and the 200, but rarely does anyone put together two solid times in both events. If we analyze the fastest 100 and 200 meter athletes and combine these times into a total performance here, we can see that very few athletes even approach 30 seconds, which would be the result of a 10-second flat 100 combined with a 20 flat 200 meters. Now, to do this in both events means you're clearly a world-class sprinter, but to do it as a junior is really one of the rarest things in all of track and field. In the history of sprinting, only 3 athletes have ever gone under this 30-second threshold as juniors, and these athletes are Osama Singa, Letsili Teboho, and also Ariane Knighton. But to address some rather unfortunate circumstances, both Osama Singa and Ariane Knighton have actually been banned for 4 years. So the only real clean athlete to ever do this is Letsili Teboho, who has a combined time of 29.87 for the 1 and the 2. Now, we have seen some other greats get quite close to this 30-second mark. There's Noah Lyles at 30.23 as a junior, there's Bayanda Walasa, who's achieved a 30.02-second combined total, and then there's a few other of the greats, such as Gout Gout at 30.19, Xavier Butler at 30.17, Trayvon Bromell at 30.56, and recently Maurice Gleaton at 30.94. But where exactly does Puripol Boonson fall on this list? Well, he falls at 30.01 seconds, directly on this 30-second threshold, and based on these numbers, he's technically the second fastest combined athlete in junior sprinting history with a clean record, now only falling behind Letsili Teboho. And Teboho did some pretty amazing things, including an Olympic gold in the 200. Seeing this number really did impress me, and maybe it's the fact that he's already been competing at such a high level for years, or maybe it's the fact that this is happening outside the typical competition for the season, but I really didn't realize how fast he was for such a long time. But now, with a 9.94 and a 20.07 in just 2 days, is some all-time serious smoke. And to do it as a junior is a huge sign of things to come. And while this 100-meter time was special to witness, it really was the 200 meters that impressed me the most. For this 200, Boonson managed to run something quite special, because for his opening 100, he split a time of approximately 10.51, and then for his second 100 meters, he closed in 9.56. Now, these are estimates, so there's a little bit of error possible on either side, but to see this man run a time even close to this number is already pretty crazy, because compared to many of the world's best in the 200 right now, his close still holds quite strong against them. Here are the final 100-meter split times from this year's World Championship final in Tokyo, and even against this incredibly deep field, Boonson's close would actually only be slower than Noah Lyles, Kenny Bednarek, and Letsili Teboho, meaning that Boonson's final 100 was quicker than Brian Lavelle, who won the World Championship bronze. It was faster than Zarnell Hughes, faster than Ogando, faster than Makarawu, and faster than Dambile from South Africa. It's one thing to reach such a stellar finish at such a young age, but to finally put together a full race like this after years of injury while everyone knew you could has to be one of the most cathartic things that Boonson has ever experienced. And moving forward, I wish him all the best, and with all this in mind, I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think Boonson's times will be moving forward? Do you think he'll be competitive on the world stage next season? And what do you expect from him throughout his career? Thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time.